Sounds like it's going to be amongst the raindrops and a pretty heavy downpour coming up on Saturday at Red Bull Arena, the annual matchup now between Inter Miami CF and New York. Phil, appreciate you coming on, giving us a couple of minutes. This game obviously had so much attention on it when the schedule first came out, and then everyone said, oh, wait a minute, that might be during an international break. And now it's become a little bit more of a game of who isn't there as opposed to who is. But I still think in a lot of ways this sets up to be a real interesting and exciting game.
I would say 100% it definitely does. You're taking a look at a team that is still learning how to play without Lionel Messi, which is going to be very important throughout the season. Probably not going to go to the Olympics, but there is a Copa America coming up, and they kind of knew that they would be missing him for at least 10 games and maybe just a little bit more. And for a team that has the potential of playing about 60 games this season, they need to learn how to play with just about everyone. So Tata Martino is going to have to shuffle a few things around this weekend.
And coming into the year with the names that Miami had not just last year, but adding to this year, so much attention on Luis Suarez, who right now, listen, to be fair, everyone thought, is he going to be able to make it the entirety of the season? That's a TBD. But at least right now, Phil, he is off to a blazing start in MLS.
And I think when you think about it, if the most important job is putting the ball in the back of the net, there are arguments that Luis Suarez, well, at the very least, even Tata Martino said, could be just as valuable as Lionel Messi. And he is showing why a lot of people think he is the epitome of the center forward of his generation. I think for those of you who thought he might be a little bit over the hill, I know there was some criticism after the first couple of games, and especially after what was kind of an unrewarding preseason for pretty much everyone involved, that he might not have it left in the tank. But I remember the start of Gremio. He struggled. When he went to Nacional at the beginning, again, when he returned, he struggled. Even Atletico and Barcelona, he was never really a quick starter. And Thomas Rongen, the guy who I call the games from, maybe not Groningen, but Ajax was probably his first big start, got off to a slow start there. So, in effect, by game three, turning nuclear hot might actually be a quick start for him. And you could argue right now he is the best player in the league.
With Messi being the obvious, and I would say Drake Callender being second, tell me amongst the players that Miami is not going to have available for tomorrow, who's the one that Red Bull fans would say, oh, that's a real good miss for Miami that they're not going to have?
Well, just to give you an idea, between injuries and international call ups, they're missing about 12 players. Um, the amazing thing, and I think even some credit goes to Phil Neville for what he kind of started or built on before he was ousted, and definitely to Tata Martino, who has built on that and bled some in. Uh, I still think there's a pretty good starting lineup out there to take on the Red Bulls. The problem will be is if you have to go to the bench, and I think that could be a little bit of a concern, and they might go just a little bit longer. But then you have to remember there are other big games coming up, and from an Inter Miami perspective, obviously geared towards the showdown against Monterrey. They don't want to risk anyone that is necessary for that game. So we'll find out how things go. They will not throw it in. We saw that in some of the games leading up, that it will be up to the players who are filling roles and filling gaps to step up. They almost did against Montreal. They did against Nashville. They really did after a slow 20 minutes against DC United. And as far as specific players, I don't know if anyone would point to him, but I would say arguably the player that will be the most missed other than Messi is going to be Federico Redondo. We're talking about a guy who comes in with a bit of a pedigree. A lot of New York fans are going to be quite familiar with his dad. He plays a lot like his dad, but a little bit more direct, has the ability to burst through lines, has the maybe even a bit more of a willingness to pass through lines, to take chances. And I think he helped settle things down, gave Sergio Busquets someone that he could rely on to keep things composed. while at the same time, when things are settled or in transition, to be able to burst through lines with either a pass or drive towards goal himself. And I think when you take a look at a lot of the goals that have been scored over the last 2 or 3 weeks, somewhere in that mix, Federico Redondo has been crucial.
Phil, in this game, and it's not going to be any different from a Red Bull perspective. There will be opportunity for guys, whether it's in the starting 11 or, as you mentioned, when you look down the bench and the coaching staff will say, "Here's your opportunity." I'll throw this one to you. Amongst guys who you might see play on Saturday, who's maybe one that you're looking forward to that hasn't figured into a lot of the matches so far, that because of all the injuries and the international call-ups, this might be their opportunity to show that they belong?
Well, I don't know what Tata is going to do. I kind of have an idea based upon what's available, but I would say there's two players that really jump out. One of them that kind of fits the bill would be a Lawson Sunderland, a guy who actually came through the Philadelphia area up in your kind of neck of the woods before coming back down here and going through Inter Miami too. And kind of like a Keaton Parks feel to him. A tall, lanky guy that can play a little bit deeper with a good pass, maybe a little bit more advanced in the field than Parks. Um, but again, a guy that has better touch than it looks like he should. However, he has not really been tested. He has shown some flashes. He has shown a few problems. But I think we started to see in recent games him getting more and more accustomed and aware to the speed, the pace of this game and what it demands. And I think that he is going to be the guy that will need to step up and provide a little bit of the unexpected. Now, another one has already started to do that in recent weeks and really was kind of brought in or was kept in to provide a little cover for Luis Suarez, and that is Leo Campana, young Ecuadorian international who a lot of people were expected to be transferred away with the arrival of Suarez, but Chris Henderson made sure that was not going to be the case, even signed him to a contract extension last year for a couple of reasons. Number one, he might be more of like a Juan Pablo Angel type of player, but he can learn a lot from Luis Suarez and take it to another level. And I think we've seen that in the past couple of games. Plus, also at 37, as good as Luis Suarez has been, and understanding that the money end of the season is still months away, there's going to be plenty of time for Campana to get his starts, to come in off the bench, maybe to start a game with Suarez to come in for him. And as we saw against DC United, for the two of them to play together, even throwing in sometimes a youngster named Schneider Borgelin, who is away with the Haitian national team. But they are trying to find a way to use some of their younger talent to fill the gaps and perhaps complement the superstars. And I think when he plays up front with Suarez, he seems a lot more comfortable with a line mate, as opposed to having to worry about kind of filling all five channels himself and where should he be. Now he only kind of has to interplay off Suarez and worry about two or three potential positions. And he seems a lot more comfortable, a lot more dangerous, a lot better with the ball, and a lot better with his decisions. So I think the out of the blue guy to keep an eye on would be Sunderland. And the guy that is on a good run of form, although brief, that would be really integral for Miami's success for him to stay on that would be Campana.
Phil, this has been great. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day. I do have to ask you one thing before I let you go. And was joking with you before we started. I can still hear 1996. I'm Phil Schoen in San Jose. How awesome is it for you to still be involved with the league now, almost 30 years later?
I have to be very careful how I say this, because it goes even beyond that. I mean, like a lot of these people, I was talking last year with Jamie Watson, who is now already retired, and he was telling me how he kind of grew up watching. And as I kind of joked in the start of this, what it shows, if you remember that, is we're both old. But I feel as though that was still probably the most memorable game I've ever worked. And I mean, I've done dozens of Clásicos, Copa Americas, national team, World Cups, but there was something personal about that one day. because I'm an American soccer fan, first and foremost, who has been blessed to be able to do what I've done over the last few decades. But unlike a lot of the soccer fans nowadays, and bless them, I mean, it's awesome to see them all loving the same game that we do. But I grew up watching the NASL. I was where Inter Miami Stadium is right now, Chase Stadium, used to be Lockhart Stadium, and I was watching the guys like Ray Hudson and Thomas Rongen and Mueller, Cubillas, Figueroa, the visitors like Pelé, et cetera, come in on this little stomping ground. Uh, and then it just disappeared for a decade. And there was nothing there. So for me, from a personal, from a professional perspective, it was amazing to be the first voice of Major League Soccer and to now even more so to watch it progress to where it is approaching 3 decades later. But for me personally, to have, okay, maybe not 40 years in the wilderness, but to go through a decade without, I think it just made it that much sweeter. And I think it also maybe cautions some of the criticism of the ownership and administration because their number one job is to make money and make sure that this league survives and thrives. Um, and one of the best ways to do that is to be entertaining. And I think for the most part, they've done that phenomenally. We can always say, well, they should have done this. They could have done this. Why aren't they doing this? And I think, as we all know, when we become fathers, it's very easy to spend other people's money. But what they've done has been phenomenal. And what we have seen from a team that went from 10 to 12 back to 10 and maybe headed in the wrong direction when the economy collapsed, now going to 30 and beyond is just phenomenal. And you can argue about how sharp the focus is when Don Garber says this is going to be a top 5 league. But you know what? You can see where the dominoes fall, and it's headed in that direction.
Bill, I can't wait to at some point continue this conversation because, as you said, as a soccer fan, historian, broadcaster, there's probably few that have some of the stories that you do, and I really appreciate you coming on and doing this, and look forward to catching up in person in May when we get down there.
Look forward to it. It'll be awesome. And reach out. We can maybe do something a little ahead of time.